Today's lesson is taking public transportation. Hi, everybody. I am Roger.
And I'm Mike.
And today we're talking about transportation. Specifically, we're talking about public transportation, which would be trains and buses and things like that, as opposed to riding your bicycle or riding your scooter or driving a car, etc. We're taking public transportation, but we're doing so in London, England. We've got a couple of people here, Kara and Joey, and they've gone to London, and they're trying to figure out how to get around to this big city in the United Kingdom.
Absolutely. Visiting London, just like visiting Tokyo or New York, it can be kind of intimidating. Especially if you're from a smaller city like Taipei or something. They have many different forms of transportation, many different systems, all integrated, all linked together. But if you're not familiar with kind of the signs and the networks and things like that, how you pay, where you get tickets, where you transfer, it can all be a little bit intimidating, a little bit scary, especially for the first day or two. And if you're like me, you will end up doing U-turns and walking back down long tunnels that, that's not the way we want to go. But I think these days with apps as well, and also I think a lot of the London public transportation, they do have very helpful staff, so you can always talk to people and ask questions. But yes, it can be a little bit exciting, but if you really want to enjoy your trip, especially if you're on a limited time budget, you want to plan an itinerary or a schedule of activities and events. So let's get into part one, and we'll be doing just that. Taking public transportation. Planning an itinerary. Kara and Joey discuss their itinerary on a visit to London. First, I'd like to visit Westminster Abbey. Dozens of English kings and queens have been crowned there, so I've always wanted to see it. What do you think?
Cool. For the afternoon, how about we make a trip to Greenwich? I've always wanted to see the Royal Observatory in Greenwich Park.
Great idea! We can then make our way back to the city center, perhaps including a visit to St. Paul's Cathedral, and that'll wrap up the day.
It sounds like a busy but exciting plan. But how about the transportation?
I'm glad you mentioned that. We need to get 2 Oyster cards. They'll cover our transportation expenses. Based on the tube map, I think we can explore all these places by subway and DLR, but for the trip to Greenwich, what do you say about taking the Thames Clipper ferry along the River Thames?
That sounds like a lovely idea. But can we use the Oyster cards for the ferry?
As a matter of fact, yes. We just need to head to Westminster Pier to take the ferry. And after exploring Greenwich, we'll take the DLR to Bank Underground Station and make the transfer to the subway system.
It seems like you've got everything under control.
大家好，第一部分介绍名词 cathedral， 它的意思是主教座堂或是大教堂。例如 European cathedrals took decades to build， 欧洲的大教堂耗时数十年建成。或者 The city's grand cathedral is a symbol of history， 该城市的大教堂是历史的象征。下一个看到名词 ferry， 表示渡轮或是渡船。例如Ferries take passengers across the river every hour. 渡轮每个小时都会载送乘客渡河。或是 You can take the ferry to the island for free. 你可以免费搭乘渡轮去岛上。继续看到名词 pier， 它的意思是码头。例如 Seaside towns often have a pier at the beach for fishing. 海滨小镇通常在海滩上设有可供钓鱼的码头。也可以说If you want to do some fishing, you can throw a line off the pier. 如果你想钓鱼，你可以在码头上垂钓。后面介绍名词 transfer， 表示交通工具的转乘、转移，也可以是调动的意思。可以说 The transfer from the bus to the subway was quick and easy. 从公车到地铁的转乘既快速又方便。又或者说 Joe got on the bus and made a transfer 2 stops after. Joe 上了公车，然后在2站后换了车。另外补充这个字的动词念成 transfer， 指使转移或是调动。造个句子 I transferred the file to the memory stick. 我把档案移到随身碟。另外一句 The company transferred Jane to its Tokyo office. 公司将 Jane 调到东京的营业处。
Okay, so part one is about planning an itinerary. Again, it's a list of things that you need to do. And in this particular case, they're arranging public transportation, where they go first, where they transfer, where they get off, etc., etc. That's all part of their itinerary. And again, we've got Kara here and Joey, and they're discussing their itinerary on a visit to London. Okay, so they're probably not from London, so they're trying to figure out exactly how to get around this big city. Joey says, first, I like to visit Westminster Abbey. Dozens of English kings and queens have been crowned there, so I've always wanted to see it. What do you think? And yes, indeed, it looks like they're tourists here because, of course, they're talking about various tourist sites or places to check out. And one place they'd like to go to is Westminster Abbey. And he knows a little bit about it. He says lots of kings and queens there were crowned there. Okay, to crown someone, in terms of the verb usage of this word, means that they became king or they became queen. Somebody put the crown on their head. In a slang way, to crown someone can also mean you hit them in the head. I'm going to crown you, watch out. But in this particular case, though, they were made king and queen by putting a crown on their heads.
Yeah, you don't want to crown King Charles III. You probably get arrested for that. That ceremony, that's called a coronation, right? They had Charles's coronation was at Westminster Abbey. So yeah, that's a great place to go. And of course, Westminster Abbey is right next to the Houses of Parliament. Big Ben is right there. And it's, of course, central London. So that's a fine spot to start their holiday. Kara agrees. She says, cool. But she has her own ideas about the afternoon. For the afternoon, how about we make a trip to Greenwich? I've always wanted to see the Royal Observatory and Greenwich Park. Yes, I think most people will know it's not Greenwich. It's not like Sandwich. It's Greenwich. So you'd basically just say Gren without the W and then itch, Greenwich. And that's where the Royal Observatory is. That's where, of course, Greenwich Mean Time. We all set our clocks to Greenwich in some kind of way. I think here in Taiwan, we're like 8 hours ahead of the Royal Observatory at Greenwich, which is, of course, 0 on latitude. And Greenwich Park. It's a lovely place to go. But yes, it is a bit of a journey outside of London, and spending a whole afternoon would probably be wise. And Joey thinks it sounds good.
Yep, that's their itinerary, the places they want to go check out. And Joey says, great idea. We can then make our way back to the city center, perhaps including a visit to St. Paul's Cathedral. And that'll wrap up the day. So again, if you're traveling, especially if you're not part of a tour group, you have to make your own itinerary and you need to plan ahead. You need to do some research to figure out how to get to these places, how much time you need to spend there, and you can basically figure out how to plan each day. So they're going to go to 3 different places, Westminster Abbey and the Greenwich Observatory there, and then they're maybe going to go to the city center where there is this giant cathedral. To me, a cathedral is just a big Catholic church.
Or a big church, because of course this would be a big Church of England church, not a Catholic church.
C of E.
C of E, yep, or the Anglicans as they're also known. I think generally it has an archbishop. That is where the archbishop works from, and also priests from, ministers from. But yes, it is that very big church with a big beautiful dome, and that'll wrap up the day. That'll sort of finish off the day. When you wrap things up, you finish things off. You're coming to the end of the activities or the action. So that will wrap up. That will finish off our day. Kara says, it sounds like a busy but exciting plan. Yeah, 3 big places to go all in one day. It will be busy, but if they manage their time well, it should be no problem. But how about the transportation? And this is such a key issue when you're talking about managing your time well. How do you go places? It will obviously determine if you have extra time or if you run out of time. Joey says, I'm glad you mentioned that. So he's kind of already been thinking about that. That's a good topic to get to. We need to get 2 Oyster cards. So this is basically like an easy card. I think in Hong Kong, what is it? The octopus? I think it's the octopus card. These are just basically one of these multi-use cards. You can add value, you can put money on them, and you can use them to get get on buses, to get on trains, to get on subways. Makes basically moving yourself using public transportation very, very convenient and probably saves you a little bit of money too. He says they'll cover our transportation expenses. So yeah, basically all forms of local public transportation in the city, you should be able to pay with Oyster cards. And maybe like many places, you also can use it for shopping and other things.
Indeed. And based on the tube map, I think we can explore all these places by subway and DLR. But for the trip to Greenwich, what do you say about taking the Thames Clipper ferry along the River Thames? Okay, so these are various options they have for transportation. Again, the metro system or the subway in London is called the Tube. I don't think they call it a subway there.
No, the underground.
Yeah, the underground, because if it's a subway in England, that refers to an underpass where you can walk under the road. But the word subway is used in places like New York and I guess Toronto as well. They have a subway where it refers to a train that goes under the ground in a city. So he's referring it to the subway as the subway, even though the English won't call it that. But yes, we can take the subway or the metro or the underground. And we can also take the DLR, which I think refers to the Docklands Light Rail. Okay, those are light rail vehicles. They're not really heavy rail like the metro here in Taipei. They're light rail vehicles, so like the one in Danshui there. I think that's a light rail vehicle. And the one that goes out to Ankang as well. Those are light rail forms of transportation. So they can do that for some things, but in order to get to Greenwich, they're going to do something else. They're going to take a ferry along the River Thames. And a ferry is just a boat that people and cars and maybe motorcycles get on in order to cross a body of water. I believe there's only one ferry, maybe two here in Taiwan. There's one in Bali that goes from Danshui over to Bali. That's a ferry. And then I think there's one in Kaohsiung as well that goes out to Qijing Island.
Right, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a ferry would kind of like a bus on the water. It kind of goes from one place to another place and back and forth all the time, every day on a very sort of set schedule. And that's a lovely way, actually. I've taken that Thames ferry down the river through the city out to Greenwich. You get a lovely tour. The tour guides can be quite funny, and you learn a lot about some of the big, beautiful, and famous buildings that you pass by on the trip. So Kara says that sounds like a lovely idea, but can we use the Oyster cards for the ferry? Yeah, because the ferry might not be part of normal city public transportation, so you may have to buy a ticket or even register or sign up the day before if you want to get on. But Joey says, as a matter of fact, yes, so you can use your Oyster card on the ferry, just a bit more convenient, so that's nice. We just need to head to Westminster Pier to take the ferry. And Westminster Pier, a pier being a place that you board, you get on or off a boat. Pier will also be a place where the boat can tie up safely. It will either stick out into the water and the two boats can kind of use either side, or you might just have it along the riverbank or something like that, but it'll be specially constructed so the boats can tie up there and people and goods and other things can be taken and loaded and unloaded safely onto a boat. So Westminster Pier is actually right across the street from Big Ben and the Houses of Parliament, so very convenient. And after exploring Greenwich, we'll take the DLR to Bank Underground Station and make the transfer to the subway system. So that's how they'll get back from Greenwich. This Docklands Light Railway goes through Canary Wharf and the sort of East End dock area that is now being redeveloped, and that'll connect you to Bank Station in the middle of the city, and then you can transfer or change to the subway system. When we move from one form of public transportation to another, we often use this verb to transfer. I have to transfer from a bus to the MRT at Zhongshan Dunhua or something like that, so I take the bus from my house, it brings me to the MRT, and then once on the MRT, I might take the MRT to Taipei Main Station and then transfer to another line or something like that. So basically, you're just changing from one form of public transportation to another, or within that system, you're changing from one line to another.
Right, and of course, you could also pronounce this word as transfer if it's a verb, but very few people actually say it that way.
That's true.
We use transfer as both the noun and the verb. And yes, they can transfer to the underground or the subway system. And Kara says, it seems like you've got everything under control. Okay, so he knows what he's doing. He's figured things out. He's read the map. He's done some research, and he knows how to get around London. So they should have no problems getting around this great city in jolly old England. Okay, we're at the end of part 1 in today's lesson. Let's move on to part 2. We're asking station staff for help. Let's find out what this is all about. Let's listen.
Asking station staff for help. After arriving at Bank Underground Station, Kara and Joey become lost, so they ask a station staff member for assistance. Excuse me, we just arrived here via the DLR, and we're a bit lost. Can you help us find the Central Line?
Of course. To get to the Central Line, you need to follow the signs for the Red Line. It's a bit of a walk through the tunnels, but just keep an eye out for the Central Line markers. Thanks. Once we get there, how do we know which train to take? Central Line trains run in 2 directions, eastbound toward Epping and westbound toward West Ruislip or Ealing Broadway.
We're heading to St. Paul's Underground Station, so which direction should we take?
You'll need a westbound train. St. Paul's is just 1 stop away from here. Got it. Follow the red signs and take the westbound train. Thank you so much. No problem. Enjoy your visit.
第二部分看到名词 assistance， 它的意思是协助、帮助或是援助。例如 I could really use your assistance on this project. 这个专案我真的需要你的协助。再看一个例子 The program offers assistance to unemployed individuals. 这项计划为失业人士提供援助。最后看到介系词 via 或是念成 via， 指的是经由、透过或是凭借。举例来说 We will travel to the city tomorrow via train. 我们明天将会经由火车抵达那座城市。或是 A representative from our office will contact you via phone or email. 我们办公室的代表人员会透过电话或电子邮件联络你。另外补充这个字的同义词 through, T-H-R-O-U-G-H, through, 表示透过。看个例句 Jeff got the job through a friend. Jeff 透过一个朋友得到这份工作。最后一句 We found out what happened through a neighbor. 我们透过一位邻居知道了事情的经过。
Okay, so again, part 2 is about asking station staff for help. The staff refers to all the people that work in a certain place, and this is in a station, and you can ask people there for help. You can ask them for directions. And after arriving at Bank Underground Station, Kara and Joey become lost. So they ask a station staff member for assistance. Okay, so this is a staff member. You can't say a staff. We don't say that. You need to say a staff member. And assistance just means help. It's kind of a polite way to say the word help.
So they have a bit of a problem, and yes, the staff member, the London transport worker, should be able to help them. Kara explains the problem. Excuse me, we just arrived here via the DLR, and we're a bit lost. Can you help us find the Central Line? So that's their problem. They've just come back from Greenwich via or by using the DLR. When you talk about the form of transportation you are using or how you are getting to a certain place, and you're talking about sort of a geographic location, this is a useful word. So I will get to your house via taxi, since I'm bringing a lot of food to your party. I could say it that way. Or I flew to Mexico City via Los Angeles or something like that. I flew from Taipei to Los Angeles, then I changed planes and airlines, or maybe even stayed a day, and then I ended up in Mexico City, the final destination of my trip. So through this place or through this method of transportation, that's how we use that that word. We're a bit lost. They're looking for Central Line, so this would be part of the Tube or the London Underground, the London subway system. So this is a probably pretty common thing. Some of these stations can be big, and they've often been built over many, many years. They can be a little confusing. Luckily, the staff member says, of course. Yes, they probably get this question 10 times a day. So how do they do it?
Well, the staff member says to get to the Central Line, you'll need to follow the signs for the red line. So in stations, of course, there are signs that help you find where you're going to go. Just like here in Taipei, we've got signs to direct you to where you need to go. You can get the red line over there, you can get the blue line over there, etc. And I assume they have similar signs in the MRT in Kaohsiung and Taichung as well. It's a bit of a walk through the tunnels, but just keep an eye out for the Central Line markers. So yes, when you get in those tunnels, transferring from one line to another, the tunnels can be quite long. So he says it's a bit of a walk through the tunnels. It's kind of a long walk, but just keep an eye out for those markers. Okay, so if you keep an eye out for something, you just keep paying attention and remind yourself that you need to figure out where you're going so you don't take a wrong turn. Keep looking for those signs until you actually get to the Central Line.
All right, that sounds pretty good, and hopefully those signs will be quite consistent. Sometimes you do have to pay a bit of attention, but if you backtrack and retrace your steps, you should get on the right track and end up where you want to be. Joey says thanks. Once we get there, assuming we find our way there, once we get there, how do we know which train to take? Because, of course, many of these lines will have trains going in two different directions, right? Running north and south at the same time, or east and west, or something like that. And then the staff member says Central Line trains run in two directions, eastbound toward Epping and westbound toward West Ruislip or Ealing Broadway. So those would probably be the terminal stations, the destination stations, the final stations along the line. If you say eastbound, that means going in an easterly type of direction. So if you're looking at a map or have a compass, you will be heading in the direction of the E, in the direction of sort of 3 o'clock on the compass. That would be the east way. The eastbound train heads towards Epping, and then the westbound coming back, it heads towards West Ruislip or Ealing Broadway. So those are a couple other stations that they might look for on signs depending on which way they want to ultimately head.
Yes, if you talk about different highways or railways, we often use the word something bound, like northbound, southbound, eastbound, westbound. Okay, so this is how it works in London here, and those are the various terminals of these lines. And Kara says, well, we're heading to St. Paul's Underground Station, so which direction should we take? That's the station we're heading to, that's what we're going to. So yeah, where should we go? Which direction should we head in? And for me, at least, I have a good sense of direction. Like I know which way is north and south. I have a feeling for that. But when I get down in tunnels, I lose that sense of direction. It's hard to tell which way is north, which way is east. So that's why I would need to ask someone in the station for help. And that, I guess, what Kara is doing here.
Exactly right. And then, of course, pay attention as you're walking around. And don't be surprised if you get a little bit off the right track. So the staff member tells them you'll need a westbound train. So they need to head west from where they are to reach St. Paul's, but not too far. St. Paul's is just one stop away from here. So you'll find your way down to the train, get on, and ride for, 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, and then get off at the next stop. It's only one stop or one station away. Joey says, got it. Follow the red signs and take the westbound train. So he's kind of repeating these instructions back to the staff member just to make sure he's got it all right. Thank you so much. So the staff member says, no problem. Enjoy your visit. And off they go down some of the twisty tunnels of the London Underground system, and I'm sure in a few moments they will be marveling at the beauty that is St. Paul's Cathedral.
Sounds like a lot of fun, and someone else who's a lot of fun is Hanny, our beloved Chinese teacher.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。在课文第一部分的对话里， Kara 和 Joey 在讨论游览伦敦的行程。他们规划了参观西敏寺，下午去格林威治，接着回到市中心，或许还可以参观圣保罗座堂。那这样就可以结束一天的行程了。文中是用 wrap up 来表达结束。那我们来先看看 wrap 当动词呢，它有包裹或者是用什么来包裹的意思。wrap up 可以当及物用或是不及物用，那我们就可以用到 wrap up 去表达穿的暖和，也可以用 wrap somebody up 来表达使某人穿的暖和。好，例如 make sure you wrap yourself up warmly， 这就是用来提醒对方务必把自己包紧紧的穿暖一点。另外 wrap up 还可以引申表达结束、圆满完成，就像课文里面它用到 wrap up the day 来表达结束一天的行程。我们顺便补充2个跟 wrap 有关的用法。第一个，我们可以用到 be wrapped up in something 来描述某人专心致力于某事，对某事有极大的兴趣。例如 Jane was completely wrapped up in her work, so she didn't hear me come through the door. Jane 完全专注在她的工作上，所以她没有听到我走进门。那第2个补充的是 wrap one's mind around 或者是 wrap one's head around， 这是口语用法，表示说试图了解或者是理解弄懂。那也可以把它写作 get one's head around 或者是 get one's mind around。 那这个用法常常用在否定句里，像是 I just can't wrap my mind around these forms，我看不懂这些表格，搞不懂。好，那再看个例句是 I'm still trying to get my head around this whole thing， 我还在努力试着搞懂这整件事情。那么在课文第2部分的对话里， Kara 和 Joey 迷路了，那他们请站务人员协助他们找到中央线。站务人员说要跟着红线的指标走，需要穿过地道走一段路，只要留意中央线的标志就行了。文中用到 keep an eye out for 加名词，这是表达留心留意什么什么，密切注意什么什么。那这个片语是指睁大眼睛留意什么的出现，以免错过。好，那这边要注意这个用语的 an eye 它是固定用单数型，那这个用语呢就跟 keep one's eye open for 加名词意思差不多。举例来说 Sean is keeping an eye out for a cheap used car， Sean 正在密切留意便宜的中古车。好，那补充一个用法是 keep an eye on 加名词，这个用法字面意思是保持眼睛目光在某人事物上，那是用来表达密切注意、照看、照顾什么什么，以确保它的安全。像 Could you keep an eye on my bag while I go to the restroom？ 我去洗手间的时候，可以请你帮我留意一下包包吗？好，那么以上今天重点整理，我们回顾今天单字吧。
Cathedral. Many tourists visit the city's cathedral, which was built over 300 years ago. Ferry. We took a ferry to the island for our weekend trip. Pier. The boat is waiting for passengers at the pier. Transfer. You will need to make a transfer to another train at the next station. Assistance. The hotel staff provided immediate assistance with our luggage. Via. Olivia sent the package via express delivery.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I am Mike.
See you next time.